things, stuff like that. Okay, so these kinds of tools, all sorts of other stuff too you might want on there. Maybe you want something like network software if you're going to restore your system from a networked backup. If it's on some other machine, then maybe you need some network software on there. And you know, you can build your own emergency disk if you have some customized thing, and there's websites out there on how to do that. On Linux.org there's discussions on how to build your own emergency disk if you have specific needs. But typically one of the ones that are already out there, like Tom's Root Boot Disk, will do the job for you. And basically what you're doing here is Tom's Root Boot Disk has you know, the root partition on it, and it's also bootable. So you put that disk in, you turn your computer on, it'll boot off that. It's got the root partition, it's got some basic tools so that you can recover your Linux system. A more common day-to-day task for system administrators is dealing with user problems and troubleshooting those kinds of problems. Now, user problems are a little tricky because somebody might come to you and say, well, this is wrong, and you've got to evaluate whether that's really wrong for them, or it's just, you know, their misunderstanding of how things work. And remember, one of the SU command, remember, this stands for switch user. Even though we use it all the time to become the super user or the root user, SU really stands for switch user. And when we were back there adding user accounts, you know, 10 videos ago or something, we used the SU command to switch into different users. So here, let me switch over to be the user Alice. So in this case, if I'm the root user, I can use, say, SU Alice, and now I'll become Alice. And you can see I'm Alice at Nugget1 now. And if I cd to go to my home directory, you can see I'm in home Alice. Okay, so I'm going to be working now with all the permissions of Alice, and if Alice had some problem accessing some file that she thought she should be able to access, you can switch over and try to access that file. And if you could access it and she couldn't, then you could say, oh, well, there's some, you know, you don't know how to do it, here's how you do it, and teach her how to do it. Or, you know, if you can't access it either, then it's some valid complaint that she's got, and you can investigate that. But at least you've narrowed down whether it's actually something that's set up with wrong permissions, or it's just her lack of understanding on how things work. All right, and so that's a powerful way to switch over to be a different user. If it's some problem they have, like with permissions or something, if it's some problem they have with, say, you know, like they can't log in, well, then, you know, you've got to give Alice the chance to log in. Give her the chance to log in on your computer if you've got the chance to do that. And if she can log in on yours, but she can't log in on her computer, on her desk, then you've narrowed things down already, right? You can say, okay, well, it's something on that computer. Maybe, you know, if some key on the keyboard is sticking, maybe the caps lock key is on, and so, you know, Linux passwords are case sensitive, right? And if the caps lock key got stuck on, then she's not going to be able to type her password in that way because the passwords are case sensitive. Okay, so those kinds of issues, you just narrow things down, you investigate, and you say, okay, what is the cause of this? What is not the cause of this? And once you can narrow some things out or rule some things out, then you've narrowed down the problem, and you can find out the cause of it much easier. Another common problem that people have in Linux is with printing. And it's not that printing's that hard, it's just that it's different from other operating systems. Like on the Macintosh or on the Windows machines, you go under the File menu in some application, and down here somewhere there's a print option, and you click on that, and it prints the file that you're working on. Well, Linux doesn't work like that, right? Linux has the LPR command, and some applications actually do have that print button, but even some of those applications that have a print button, when you click on it, a little dialog box comes up and says, what's the command you want me to use to print? Right? And then you have to type in the print command anyway, like LPR. Maybe you have to give the -P option and name the printer as well. Okay, so here's how I would name the HP1 printer for the LPR option, and I might have to do that in some dialog box, even if there is a print button in that application. All right, so typically you have to use the LPR command, and LPR definitely prints text. It prints PostScript just fine. What it doesn't necessarily print is things like PDF files, for instance, and there, in that case, you have to do a conversion to PostScript before you can print them. Okay, so let me show you how to do this. If we go down into the hold directory here and do a listing, I've got this file called linuxobjectives.pdf. It's just CompTIA's objectives for the Linux Plus exam. All right, and what I'm going to do is I want to print this out to the screen, or print this out to the printer, but there is no PDF filter in my chain between in the print queue chain there. Okay, so there is no PDF filter, so I've got to convert this to PostScript first. And the way that I can do that is with this utility called PDF to PS. So this will convert PDF files to PostScript files. And what I do here is I give the one file, and then I convert it to PostScript. So I say linuxobjectives.pdf to linuxobjectives.ps. I do that. It takes a couple seconds. I do a listing, and there's my linuxobjectives.ps file. And now I can print that out to the printer just as the PS file, and it's going to print out much nicer than the PDF file. Okay, so you can make up little scripts to do this if you want, to do these conversions, whatever works for you. Basically, the idea is you have to get it into PostScript format, or you've got to put some kind of special filter in the path there to the printer that takes care of PDF files and converts them to PostScript. Now what I want to do is take you through a troubleshooting example just from beginning to end. Okay, so here's an example that comes up sometimes. You're the system administrator, and you've mounted a CD-ROM for some people to use, and now you've got another CD-ROM that you want to mount for you or for somebody else to use. And so you go to unmount the old one, and so you remember you can unmount it with the umount command that we've learned before. And you can unmount it by either specifying the device, like /dev/CD-ROM, or you can unmount it by specifying the mount point. So here I'm going to say /mount/CD-ROM, that's the mount point of my device, and this is how I can unmount it. So I do that, and it says the device is busy. Okay, well, why is the device busy? Well, maybe the device is busy because somebody's using a file there. Okay, so you could shoot an email out to everybody and say, hey, is anybody using this? And people write back, no, I haven't used that. You know, it's been an hour since I've used that. And so now you have to find out, well, wait, somebody's using it, right? Something's going on. And so you don't want to have to go around to every single person's machine and look and see if they're using some file there. So instead what you can do is you can use the lsof command. Okay, the lsof command lists open files. That's what it stands for, list open files. And this will list open files in the whole system. So if I just do lsof and I pipe it through more, you're going to see just how many open files there are on the system. Okay, let me hit spacebar to page down here, and I'm just going to hit, there's hundreds of these, right? You don't want to have to go through every single one of these files and read each line by line, and see if one of them has to do with the CD-ROM, right? So let's use, instead of doing that, let's use lsof, and instead of piping it through more, let's pipe it through a grep statement that we've now brushed up on. And this grep statement can look through that whole output list for some particular word, like CD-ROM. Okay, so I'm going to say lsof, pipe that through a grep for CD-ROM. Now every line of the output of lsof that had the word CD-ROM in it is going to display on the screen. So we do that, and here's the answer to our question. Okay, it says the bash shell is using it, the process ID is 12052, the owner is Perry, and the current working directory there is mount CD-ROM. Okay, so this is telling us exactly what it is. It tells us that Perry's the culprit, there's the process ID, and he's in the mount CD-ROM directory. Actually, you know, all that Perry's doing here is that he's just sitting in that directory. He doesn't have any open files. He's just CD'd into mount CD-ROM, did his work, and then just left a shell window there. You know, minimize the window or put it in the background or something. And he's not really even doing anything. The point here is that even if you're CD'd into that directory, even if you're just in the mount CD-ROM directory doing nothing, really what's happening is the bash shell has the mount CD-ROM directory open, and so the operating system will not let you unmount that device. Okay, so you have two options here. One, you could go to Perry and say, hey, you know, get out of that directory, I need to unmount it. Or you could just go ahead and kill this process ID, 12052. If you were in a real rush or it was some emergency or something, you could just do a kill -9 on 12052 and get rid of this thing. I'll just do it that way, just for the heck of it. So we'll do it like this. And now we do that same lsof again. We don't get anything. And now when I go to unmount my CD-ROM, which I'll unmount this time by the device name, I'll do it that way, and now it's unmounted. Okay, so there was our little example using lsof in combination with grep. We were able to see what open files were on the system, and that allowed us to figure out what open files there were, get rid of those open files, and then we could unmount our CD. Well, it's time to wrap up another nugget. This was our second troubleshooting nugget. We'll do one more on networking and some other miscellaneous issues. In this one, we talked about some useful commands for troubleshooting, like find and grep. We talked about the tail command. And we talked about these in the context of examining log files. Then we moved on and talked about boot problems, you know, how to boot without Lilo, like using loadlin. We also talked about emergency recover disks a little bit, and you should definitely have one of these emergency recover disks ready, because you never know when something's going to go wrong in your system. And then just some common problems, user issues, logging in, permission problems, mount, unmount problems, that kind of stuff. And we just tried to give you a little example of these, and just to give you a feel for what kind of problems you're going to run across as a system administrator. Well, I hope you found this nugget informative, and thanks again for viewing.